Alright, what's going on everybody? So today we're going to be talking about how to save your battery life on your iPhone with iOS 14. And so these are going to be a bunch of tips and suggestions that you could use to possibly get some better battery life here on your device. And also some of these may improve your battery's health over long term. So I have a whole lot to cover today, but first I want to give you some broad tips here first. Now we're going to be in the settings app quite a bit here because that's obviously where you can turn on and off some of these features that may be ruining your battery life. But first, let's talk about how to see what is actually using the most battery. So if you go into your settings, you scroll down a little bit, you can see right here, battery. And if you tap on that, you're going to get some stuff pop up here. Now it's going to take a little bit to generate, but as you can see, you have the option for low power mode up here at the top, and then right here you have your battery health. Now this does not look good, does it? Because my battery's health is significantly degraded apparently. As you can see, my maximum capacity is only 78%. So hey, it thinks I need a new battery. So I actually didn't know that. I just literally found that out. But anyways, you can see your battery health in there, and if you scroll down here a little bit, you can actually see when your device was last charged and what the battery has basically done over time. So as you can see, my last charge to 100% was around 8:30 this morning, and then down here you can see how long your screen has actually been on as well as how long it's been off. So that's pretty cool to see that as well. You can even see a last 10 days graph here to see what has been using your most battery over the past 10 days. And this is probably where you want to look because, well, it'd be more accurate to see over time because your usage may vary from day to day. So you can scroll through this list down here and see which apps are using the most battery life. So it looks like I have a social media problem with mine. So if you notice an app that's using a whole lot of battery life, well then you may want to limit your use on that app or turn off background app refresh or something like that. But we'll discuss that more a little bit later. Now let's talk about your battery health right here. So as you can see, mine's not doing too hot, 78%, and it's actually telling me it needs to be serviced, which that's pretty surprising. But it is still supporting the peak performance capability here. Now, one of the main also reasons for your battery life, and I have been noticing battery going down quite a bit lately, and I guess this is why. But if you look at your maximum capacity, obviously if this is lower than about 80%, then your battery life is going to suffer. You're probably going to get a lot less battery life, even if you go through all these tips and things that I'm going to show you today. So your device may just be suffering from a degraded battery. This is an iPhone 10, so it's what, like 3 or 4 years old now, right? So it's got a lot of use, and that's just what happens. Batteries degrade over time, and that might be the cause of your battery troubles. Now this setting down here is extremely important. This is optimized battery charging. So you want to make sure that this is on, and you want to get on some sort of charging routine. So the best way to do that, and the way that I do it, is to charge your phone overnight. So instead of plugging up throughout the day just to juice up whenever you need to, just plug it up overnight, and it will learn what times your phone go on the charger and what times it comes off, and it will hold your battery to around 80% until it gets close to the time you take your phone off the charger. So for example, what mine does is I'll plug it in at night, and then you'll notice once it gets to about 80%, it'll say something like battery be 100% charged by 6:30 a.m. So that's a pretty important setting. You definitely want to make sure that optimized battery charging is turned on. Now low power mode. So low power mode, you can turn that on of course, and it turns your battery into this yellow color up there to let you know that it's been activated. But what low power mode does is it reduces a lot of the background activity on your phone. So it disables things like mail fetching in the background, iCloud photo syncing, things like that, background app refresh, all that stuff that could be using a lot of your battery life in the background. Now low power mode, I've seen some people turn this on all the time. Well, that is not the right thing to do. And Apple's own website actually says to only use low power mode when you're around 20% of battery life. That's why when your battery gets to around 20% and you get the low battery warning message, and it actually says, do you want to turn on low power mode? So yes, low power mode is a great way to conserve your battery, but using it all the time is not recommended. Okay, so those are just some general things here about your battery. Now let's go into the individual tips on how to save some battery life. Okay, so if you have an iPhone with an OLED display, so basically iPhone 10 and above, then you can actually enable dark mode to save a little bit of battery life. So you just enable dark mode, of course, and it makes everything dark, right? And this is helpful because you're not using a lot of colors on the screen. And OLED panels are pretty efficient. You know, they give you those deep blacks and those bright whites. So using just a solid black, it's almost like the screen itself is actually turned off. So using dark mode can actually help save your battery life a little bit. Now, if you don't want to use dark mode all day long, you can actually set it for automatic turning on and off. So if we go to display and brightness, you can see that it says light until sunset. So that means that it'll automatically change over to dark mode. As you can see, there's the automatic toggle right there. So whenever your sunset time in your local areas, that's when it'll change to dark mode. And that can be beneficial because you might be using your phone more in the evening hours than during the day. Okay, so the next thing here is actually the auto lock feature. So auto lock's a pretty handy little setting here that allows your phone to cut off and lock itself when it detects that you're not using it. And if you actually have a phone with Face ID, you can see down here that it knows when you're actually looking at the display. So auto lock will basically be disabled when it detects attention to the phone screen. Now, it's probably a good idea to keep your auto lock at about a minute or 30 seconds. 30 seconds is probably better. You could also think of this as like a security risk. Maybe you lay your phone down and you don't want your auto lock sitting there for 5 minutes when somebody could come around and pick up your phone. And if you set it to never, then your phone will never turn off even when you're not looking at it. So imagine if you set your phone down and forget that it's on. So that's a pretty handy feature too, and I highly recommend you using the 1 minute or 30 seconds, and that can save you some battery life if you forget to turn your phone off. Another thing here below the auto lock setting is the raise to wake setting. So if I lock my phone, and let's just say it's sitting down like this, and you pick it up, the phone automatically comes on. So that means the phone is constantly, I guess, looking or trying to feel when there is motion to enable the raise to wake feature. So that could save you a little bit of battery life if you turn that feature off, because your phone will not be always sitting there expecting and using a little bit of battery life to detect motion. Okay, so let's go over to some accessibility settings. And one thing in accessibility that's now been kind of hidden in here is actually auto brightness. So if you go into your accessibility, you have to go into display and text and scroll down the bottom, and that's where you can now find the auto brightness on and off switch. Now, auto brightness, to me, it's kind of a no-brainer to have this enabled, because it will use the light sensor, which is up here, to determine how bright an area is that you're in. So for example, if you're sitting in a dark room, then your phone's display will dim all the way down. If you walk outside in the sunlight, then your display will get as bright as possible. Now, some people turn this off for different reasons, of course, but leaving this on and letting the phone manage the screen brightness itself is a lot better than you just turning your brightness all the way up and leaving it all the way up all the time, because powering this display, of course, is going to eat up a lot of your battery life. So be sure you have your auto brightness on and let the phone manage that stuff for you. Also, in these accessibility settings, there's a section here for motion. If we go into motion, we can actually see an option up here that says reduce motion. So this reduces the motion of the user interface. So basically, if we turn this on, the two main things you'll notice is your app animations. So obviously when you close an app or open an app, there's a little bit of an animation. And on your lock screen, it's kind of hard to see on camera, but if you move your phone slightly, you can actually see your wallpaper moving in the background. So if I go in here and I hit reduce motion, then when I go out of an app, it'll kind of just disappear. And then when I go back in, it'll kind of just reappear. And with the lock screen, you no longer have that moving effect going on. So that little bit of getting rid of that extra motion, it could help your battery life. And to me, I actually think when you have reduced motion on, it kind of makes your phone feel faster because you don't have to go through that animation to actually see an app open or something like that. So reduced motion is a pretty good thing to have on if you haven't already. Now everybody has seen that thing where you can actually double tap the back of your phone to make it do something. But have you ever thought about that your phone could accidentally be double tapped? For example, maybe it was in your pocket or something like that. And that feature allows you to do many different things. And one of them I know is actually turning on your flashlight. So think about it. If you have your phone in your pocket and it accidentally gets double tapped, then your flashlight could come on and it might take you a while to realize how long your flashlight's been on. Or even something as simple as taking a screenshot. Anytime that double tap feature, if you have that enabled, that double back tap, you could end up really running down your battery if you don't know that that's active. So if you do use that feature, just be careful, kind of take notice if it's being enabled accidentally. Now let's talk about a lot of your connectivity features here. So obviously we have our cellular connection, we have Wi-Fi, we have Bluetooth, and you can't see it here, but we also have AirDrop, of course. So these things are constantly using the antenna in your phone, and AirDrop is constantly looking for other devices. So first off, with AirDrop, if you don't use AirDrop that often, it's probably a good idea to turn it off when you're not using it, because it could constantly be looking for devices around you, and that could be lowering your battery life. Same thing with Bluetooth. Now, sometimes this is unavoidable, like for example, if you have an Apple Watch, you kind of have to have Bluetooth enabled all the time. But if you don't use any Bluetooth devices, then turn it off. Only turn it on when you need to. Now with cellular and Wi-Fi, this is where it kind of gets interesting. So the cellular uses more battery than Wi-Fi. So if you're in an area with low cell service, the phone is constantly looking for a stronger cell signal, and that can actually degrade your battery life. Same thing if you're in an area with 5G or maybe LTE. If you're on LTE or 5G, you probably notice your battery just being destroyed, especially on 5G. So if you're in an area with low cell signal, turn it off. Put your phone in airplane mode until you get to a better service. And use Wi-Fi whenever possible. I know some people that have unlimited data plans and they don't even use Wi-Fi, even in their own house. Use Wi-Fi. When you're at your home or somewhere you trust the Wi-Fi, use it. It uses a lot less battery life than a cellular connection does. Now this also goes along with AirDrop kind of, but Handoff is another feature that could be draining your battery life. There's actually some people saying that when they disabled this, it actually improved it quite a bit. So Handoff basically allows you, if you have multiple Apple devices, so for example, if you have your iPhone and your Mac, and let's say you look up something on your Mac in Safari, well then a little pop-up will appear down here when you're in Safari, and it'll ask you if you want to continue on your iPhone. So that feature obviously is pretty helpful and handy at times, but if you don't use it, then this is just constantly looking for another device to hand off to. So especially for those that may just own an iPhone, you don't need handoff enabled until you get another device and you might want to use it. But turning that off could help you out. Alright, so here's a major one right here, your location services. So if you go into location services, this is where you can choose which applications are actually using your location. So you can set them to many different things, of course. So if we take a look at the weather, obviously you can set it to while using the app, ask next time you use it, never or always. So if you have a lot of apps that are always, then that means no matter what, whether you're in the app or not, it is using your current location. And with your phone always trying to determine your current location for apps and turning on the antenna or GPS in your phone, then that can really hurt your battery life. So a good idea is to go through this list of apps and set them up how you want them. Also, another thing, precise location. This is a new setting here in iOS 14, and basically this allows you to use either your exact location or a approximate location. So for example, if you live in, Atlanta, Georgia, right? So precise location would be Atlanta, Georgia. General location would be like around Atlanta. So this allows to just use a general location that's been using constantly instead of determining your exact location every single time. So go through this list of your apps. If you find an app that's like says always or something like that, turn it off. Another one here is watch faces and workouts. So if you have a watch face with like the weather on it or something, it's always going to be using it. So just change these settings, set them up how you want to, but that can obviously help you out a lot. Now, the main way to obviously stop this would be to turn off location services, but nowadays that's pretty much impossible to do without being able to access main features of apps and other things. So go through this list and check your location services. See if there's any culprits that have been always using your location. And also, if you look up here next to your clock, that's how you can tell when your location has been used either recently or currently. So if you see this little hollow one like right here, that means something has recently used my location. If it was a solid arrow, then something is actively using my location. And if nothing's up there, then nothing's using your location. Okay, so here's another big one right here, your background app refresh. This is actually disabled when you turn on low power mode. And this basically allows apps to refresh themselves in the background constantly. So if you open something up, you always have the latest and greatest information. Now, this has been off on my phone for a really, really long time because I actually noticed my battery life being decreased when this was on. So if you turn it on, you can choose to have it refresh on Wi-Fi or Wi-Fi and cellular data. So if you don't have an unlimited plan, well, you might want to obviously just put it on Wi-Fi. You can also choose individual apps. So I guess if you had to have this on and absolutely had to have an app refresh for some reason, then you could set it individually here. But like I said, I just keep it off and nothing has happened to me. So yeah, background app refresh, that really will get you. Speaking of applications, please don't close your apps. There is no need to close your apps. The device manages the RAM and all that stuff, and it manages these apps, right? So if you don't use an app for a long time, it will suspend it for you automatically. If you close your apps all the time, all you're doing is causing your phone to completely reload an app. And guess what? That hurts your battery life. So yeah, don't close your apps in the app switcher. Just don't do it. The phone handles that for you just fine. Speaking of apps are able to download automatically in the background if you have that enabled, and also they can download app updates. So if you go to the App Store settings, see up here automatic downloads. I only have app updates on. If you turn apps on, that means, for example, if you download an app on your iPad, it'll automatically download it to your iPhone. So I don't necessarily do that because I have different purposes for my iPad and my phone. But with app updates, you could turn that off and save a little bit of battery so your phone isn't downloading apps. Although I will say that I have noticed that app updates only happen when I actually plug the phone in. So this may or may not help you, but it is something you could turn off. iOS 14 obviously has introduced widgets, and I will be honest with you, I love my widgets, as you can see, but they can be draining your battery life, especially if you have a whole lot of them, like multiple screens, because your widgets refresh in the background. So for example, if you look at the weather and it says it's 60 degrees, if I tap on that, it's actually 61 degrees. So that shows you that the widgets aren't refreshing all the time, but they do refresh periodically. So if you have a whole lot of them, they could be causing your battery life to go down even more. So you may want to manage your widgets, maybe only have one or two. That might help you out. So with the Apple Mail app, it can use a lot of your battery life. So I have seen people complain about that, especially if you have a lot of email accounts. Now, email accounts, they either push or they fetch new mail. Now, I would go into the settings and show you this, but I don't want you to see my email accounts, of course. But if you go in there, you can actually choose to change the amount of time that mail is either pushed or fetched. So you could set it to every 15 minutes. You could set it to manually, so whenever you open the mail app and all that kind of stuff. And that's constantly going on in the background if you have it set to like 15 minutes or so. And if you get a ton of email, well, that can use your battery life. And low power mode actually disables the fetching of mail in the background. So that shows you if low power mode is disabling it, then it's definitely a battery killer. So you may want to go in there and adjust your email settings on your device. Now, another way, if you don't really want to adjust your mail settings, you could just use a third-party email. So for example, if you just have Yahoo Mail or Gmail, then use the Yahoo Mail app or use the Gmail app. It might be more efficient than the Mac Mail app. So that is another option as well. Let's talk a little bit about notifications. So with notifications, obviously you can pretty much customize them however you want to. But one thing you may want to consider is, do you really want the lock screen notification? So if you turn this off, that means your phone will not light up or come on whenever you get a notification. And that can save your battery life, especially if you get a ton of notifications throughout the day, because your phone will constantly be turning on and off its display. Now, if you have an Apple Watch, you really don't have to worry about that because obviously notifications all come to your wrist. But if you don't, then turning that off will allow you to simply just pick up your phone and look at it and then see all your notifications without the phone vibrating and coming on and off throughout the day. Now, if you don't want to go in here and actually mess with all these notification settings, because after all, it's each individual app that you would have to change, one simple solution to this is to actually just place your phone face down when you're not using it. So your phone actually knows when it's face down, and when a notification comes through, the display will not light up. So that's an easier way to solve the notification problem there. Now, a couple things here to do with your sound recognition. So if you go into accessibility, you scroll down to the bottom, there's a setting here called sound recognition. If you turn this on, basically this will listen for important sounds. So for example, fire alarms or doorbells, things like that. So that means your phone's microphone will constantly be on and listening for sounds. Well, obviously, if your microphone is constantly on, that can degrade your battery. And another thing is, sound recognition wise, which is not in here, it's with Siri, of course. So if you say, hey, you know who, then she is always constantly listening. So a way to save a little bit of battery as well is to turn off the hey feature. So you could do that and possibly save a little bit of battery as well. Now, the final one I'm going to talk about today is using your phone while charging. So this is actually on Apple's website as well. Now, this is mainly not necessarily like a battery saving tip because obviously you're charging your phone, but this is more of a battery longevity kind of thing, battery health wise. So if you are just browsing the web, maybe sending a quick text or something while your battery's charging, that's fine. It's not going to really mess anything up. But if you're charging your battery and you're watching a ton of YouTube or something, or you're playing a bunch of games or doing some CPU intensive stuff, you're going to notice your phone heat up like crazy. And that is not good because that is really hurting the battery. And also, Apple even recommends removing certain cases while you're charging because your phone obviously is ventilating itself without a case normally. So some cases could be restrictive and it could also be degrading your battery. So that's just another quick tip there about charging your phone. But anyways, guys, that was a lot. The camera actually says 40 minutes of recording. But yeah, that's just a whole bunch of tips and maybe some helpful things here and there in case you're noticing your battery life going down more than it should. That may help you out. So let me know what you think. There's obviously many more tips out there. Everybody has their own suggestions, but those are just some of the ones that I think would be most helpful to you. So let me know if there's a suggestion that I did not mention here that you think works the best. Be sure to leave it in the comments down below. But anyways, guys, that's all I got for you today. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch y'all in the next video.